Marcus Thompson had always been a meticulous man. His military background in explosive ordnance disposal had taught him the value of precision, attention to detail, and following protocols to the letter. After 20 years of service, he had retired to the quiet suburb of Willowbrook, expecting to live out his golden years in peace. He purchased a modest 2-story home at the end of Maple Street, complete with a basement that he converted into his personal workshop and secure storage area. Neighborhoods seemed perfect at first. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained lawns, and friendly neighbors who waved from their porches. Marcus spent his first few months settling and organizing his workshop and ensuring his ammunition storage met all federal, state, and local regulations. Having worked with explosives for 2 decades, he understood better than most the importance of proper storage protocols. His basement contained a professionally installed ammunition locker that exceeded all ATF requirements, complete with temperature control, moisture regulation, and multiple security systems. Marcus had also taken an additional precaution that few homeowners would ever consider. Through his contacts at the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, he had arranged for his storage facility to be monitored remotely. Agent Rebecca Morris, a longtime colleague, had helped him set up a system where any unauthorized access attempts would immediately alert federal authorities. It was overkill for a private citizen, but Marcus believed in being thorough. The trouble began 6 months after he moved in, when Linda Patterson was elected president of the Willowbrook Homeowners Association. Linda was a woman in her early 50s, with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and an attitude that suggested she believed the entire neighborhood existed for her personal management. She had moved to Willowbrook 3 years earlier, after divorcing her wealthy husband, and seemed determined to make her mark on the community through increasingly aggressive HOA enforcement. Linda had worked her way through the neighborhood systematically, identifying what she considered violations and issuing citations with remarkable efficiency. She had forced the Johnsons to repaint their shutters because the shade of blue was not on the approved color list. She had made the elderly Mr. Peterson remove his bird feeders, claiming they attracted unwanted wildlife. She'd even convinced the HOA board to ban certain types of mailboxes, retroactively forcing half the neighborhood to replace theirs. When Linda turned her attention to Marcus, she initially focused on minor infractions. She cited him for having his garbage cans visible from the street for more than the allowed 4 hours after pickup. She complained that his lawnmower created too much noise before 9 a.m. on weekends. She even measured his grass height with a ruler and issued a violation notice when it exceeded the 3-inch maximum by a 1/4 inch. Marcus responded to each citation, professionally providing documentation that showed he was in compliance with all stated regulations. He kept meticulous records, photographed everything, and maintained a paper trail that would make any military administrator proud. But Linda seemed to view his systematic responses as a challenge rather than compliance. The situation escalated when Linda began conducting what she called neighborhood security inspections. She would walk through the streets with a clipboard and camera, documenting anything she deemed suspicious or inappropriate. During one of these inspections, she noticed that Marcus frequently carried what appeared to be equipment cases too. And from his basement entrance, Linda became convinced that Marcus was running some kind of business from his home, which was prohibited by HOA regulations. She began watching his house more closely, noting when delivery trucks arrived and keeping track of who visited his property. Her suspicions grew when she observed that some of his visitors appeared to be federal agents, recognizable by their standard government-issue vehicles and professional appearance. What Linda did not know was that these visits were routine inspections related to Marcus's ammunition storage permit. As a private citizen storing significant quantities of ammunition, he was subject to periodic federal oversight. The agents were simply ensuring his continued compliance with storage regulations and updating his security clearances. But to Linda, these visits suggested something far more sinister. After weeks of surveillance, Linda convinced herself that Marcus was operating an illegal weapons business from his basement. She imagined scenarios involving black market sales, federal investigations, and neighborhood danger. Her fears were compounded by her complete ignorance of firearms regulations and her assumption that any Significant ammunition storage must be illegal. Linda's decision to take action came after she witnessed what she interpreted as a particularly suspicious exchange. Marcus had been expecting a delivery of ammunition components that he used for recreational. Reloading, a perfectly legal hobby enjoyed by millions of Americans. The delivery driver had helped Marcus carry several heavy boxes to his basement entrance while Linda watched from behind her curtains. That evening, Linda called an emergency HOA board meeting. She presented her case to the other board members, painting Marcus as a potential security threat, who was clearly violating multiple community standards. She showed photographs of the delivery trucks, government vehicles, and equipment cases, claiming they constituted evidence of illegal commercial activity. The HOA board consisted of 5 members, including Linda. Tom Rodriguez was a retired accountant who generally avoided conflict and preferred to go along with whatever the majority decided. Patricia Wells was a school teacher who was genuinely concerned about neighborhood safety but often relied on others for technical expertise. David Kim was a young software engineer who had joined the board thinking it would be a simple civic duty, but had quickly learned that HOA politics could be surprisingly complex. Finally, there was Margaret Foster, an elderly widow who had lived in the neighborhood for 30 years and had initially opposed Linda's election, but now found herself outnumbered on most issues. Linda's presentation was compelling to those unfamiliar with firearms regulations. She spoke passionately about protecting property values, maintaining neighborhood character, and ensuring the safety of local families. She proposed that the HOA conduct an immediate inspection of Marcus's property to determine the extent of what she was certain were serious violations. Margaret Foster raised the obvious legal concerns about such an inspection. She pointed out that the HOA had no authority to search private homes and that their jurisdiction was limited to external property, maintenance, and architectural compliance. But Linda had anticipated this objection and came prepared with what she claimed was legal precedent. Linda had researched HOA enforcement powers and found several cases where associations had successfully used emergency safety provisions to gain access to private property. She argued that if Marcus was storing dangerous materials or operating an illegal business, the HOA had not only the right but the obligation to investigate. She had even consulted with an attorney who had provided carefully worded advice about the circumstances under which such action might be justified. The board voted 3-2 in favor of Linda's proposal, with Tom Rodriguez and Patricia Wells joining her while David Kim and Margaret Foster opposed. The deciding factor was Linda's claim that she had received anonymous complaints from other neighbors expressing fear about potential dangers. While she could not reveal the identity of these complainants due to privacy concerns, she assured the board that multiple residents were concerned. In reality, Linda had manufactured these complaints herself. She had made anonymous phone calls to the HOA office using different voices and speaking styles to report various suspicions about Marcus's property. She had even created fake email addresses to send written complaints that she then cited as evidence. Of widespread neighborhood concern, the board approved. Linda planned to conduct what they termed a compliance inspection of Marcus's property. They would claim authority under the HOA emergency safety provisions and demand immediate access to verify that no dangerous or illegal activities were taking place. Linda volunteered to lead the inspection team and requested that the HOA attorney be present to provide legal support. Marcus's first indication of trouble came when he received a formal notice from the HOA, demanding access to his property for an emergency safety inspection. The notice cited multiple alleged violations and claimed authority under both HOA regulations and county safety codes. It demanded that Marcus provide immediate access to all areas of his property, including his basement storage areas. Marcus read the notice with growing disbelief. He had spent months carefully documenting his compliance with all applicable regulations. His ammunition storage exceeded federal requirements and had been repeatedly inspected and approved by appropriate authorities. The HOA claims about safety, violations, and illegal activities were not only false, but potentially defamatory. Marcus' first response was to contact his attorney Robert Hayes, who specialized in property law and had handled several HOA disputes. Hayes reviewed the notice and immediately identified multiple legal problems with the HOA demands. The association had no authority to conduct internal property inspections. Beyond their architectural review powers and their emergency safety provisions, could not be used for fishing expeditions based on unsubstantiated suspicions. Hayes recommended that Marcus formally refuse the inspection demand and provide documentation of his federal compliance to demonstrate that no safety issues existed. He also suggested that Marcus consider filing a harassment complaint against Linda personally if her behavior continued to escalate, but Marcus had a different idea. His military background had taught him the value of gathering intelligence before engaging an enemy, and he suspected that Linda's motivations went beyond simple HOA enforcement. He decided to let the situation develop while documenting everything. For potential legal action, Marcus contacted Agent Rebecca Morris at the ATF to inform her about the HOA situation. Morris was immediately concerned about the potential for unauthorized access to federal ammunition storage facilities. She explained that any attempt to force entry into Marcus's secure storage area would constitute a federal crime and could trigger serious legal consequences for anyone involved. Maurice also revealed something that Marcus had not known. The ATF had been monitoring Linda Patterson for several months as part of a broader investigation into illegal firearms trafficking in the region. Linda's ex-husband had been involved in questionable arms dealing activities, and Linda herself had made several suspicious inquiries about purchasing large quantities of ammunition through private sales. The federal investigation had initially focused on Linda's potential involvement in her ex-husband's business activities, but had expanded when agents learned about her obsessive interest in Marcus' ammunition storage. The ATF suspected that Linda's real motivation was not HOA enforcement, but rather an attempt to gain access to Marcus' legally stored ammunition for potential illegal resale. This revelation changed everything for Marcus. What he had assumed was simple neighborhood harassment was actually part of a federal investigation into illegal weapons trafficking. Linda was not just an overzealous HOA president, but a potential criminal who was using her position to target his property for illegal purposes. Agent Morris explained that the ATF had been waiting for Linda to make a move that would provide clear evidence of criminal intent. Her demand for access to Marcus's ammunition storage was exactly the kind of action they needed to build a case. Morris asked Marcus to cooperate with the investigation by allowing Linda's inspection attempt to proceed while federal agents. The plan, was elegant in its simplicity. Marcus would appear to comply with the HOA demands, while federal agents observed from concealed positions. If Linda attempted to access the ammunition storage or made any moves to remove materials from the property, she would be arrested immediately. If she simply conducted a legitimate inspection and left, then no harm would be done, and the investigation would continue. Marcus agreed to cooperate, but insisted on additional safeguards. The ATF installed additional surveillance equipment throughout his property, including hidden cameras and audio recording devices. They also positioned tactical teams in nearby locations ready to respond within seconds if the situation became dangerous. Agent Morris also coordinated with local law enforcement to ensure that any necessary arrests could be made without endangering neighborhood residents. The Willowbrook Police Department was briefed on the situation and instructed to stay clear of the area during the planned inspection unless specifically requested by federal agents. Linda, meanwhile, was proceeding with her own preparations for the inspection. She had convinced the HOA attorney to accompany her, though he had expressed significant reservations about the legal basis for their actions. She had also recruited Tom Rodriguez and Patricia Wells to serve as witnesses, claiming that multiple board members needed to be present to ensure proper documentation. Linda had also made what she thought were discreet inquiries about the potential value of various types of ammunition. She had contacted several gun shops in neighboring cities asking about bulk ammunition prices and storage requirements. These inquiries had been immediately reported to the ATF by dealers who were required to report suspicious activities as part of their federal licensing agreements. The federal investigation now had clear evidence that Linda was planning to profit from her access to Marcus' property. Her inquiries about ammunition values, combined with her aggressive pursuit of inspection rights, created a pattern that strongly suggested criminal intent. The ATF was prepared to arrest her the moment she attempted to remove any materials from Marcus's property. Marcus spent the days before the scheduled inspection making final preparations. He secured all of his personal items and ensured that his legitimate ammunition storage was clearly marked and properly documented. He also prepared detailed records showing his federal compliance and stored them in a location where Linda could easily find them if she was conducting a legitimate inspection. The ammunition locker itself was a work of art. Marcus had spared no expense in creating a storage system that exceeded every safety requirement. The main storage area was climate-controlled and featured multiple redundant security systems. Individual ammunition types were separated and clearly labeled with purchase dates, quantities, and storage conditions. Meticulously documented, but the most important feature was invisible to casual observation. The entire storage system was wired to immediately alert federal authorities if anyone attempted unauthorized access. Motion sensors, pressure plates, and electronic locks were all connected to a secure communication system that would notify the ATF within seconds of any tampering. Agent Morris had enhanced these existing systems with additional federal monitoring equipment. Every surface in the storage area was now covered by high-resolution cameras that could capture even the smallest details. Audio recording devices were sensitive enough to pick up whispered conversations from anywhere in the basement. The federal agents would have complete documentation of everything that occurred during Linda's inspection. The night before the scheduled inspection, Marcus reviewed his plans one final time. He had documented everything, prepared all necessary evidence, and coordinated with federal authorities to ensure that justice would be served, regardless of Linda's intentions. If she was simply an overzealous HOA president conducting a legitimate inspection, she would find nothing to criticize and would hopefully leave him alone. If she was a criminal attempting to steal federal ammunition, she would be arrested and prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Marcus went to bed that night with the satisfaction of knowing that he had done everything possible to protect both his property and his community. His military training had prepared him for complex operations, and this situation, while unusual, was certainly manageable with proper planning and execution. The morning of the inspection dawned clear and cold. Marcus was up early, as was his habit, reviewing his checklist and ensuring that everything was ready. He had dressed in his typical weekend attire, jeans, and a flannel shirt that gave no indication of his military background or the federal investigation that was about to unfold. At exactly 10 a.m., Linda Patterson arrived at Marcus's front door, accompanied by the HOA, attorney Tom Rodriguez, and Patricia Wells. She was dressed as if for a business meeting, with a severe black suit and clipboard filled with official-looking documents. Her expression suggested someone who expected to find serious violations and was prepared to take aggressive action. Marcus greeted the group politely and invited them inside. He offered coffee, which everyone declined, and then asked to see their official authorization for the inspection. Linda produced a document that she claimed gave the HOA broad inspection powers, but which Marcus's attorney had already identified as legally questionable. Despite his reservations about the legal basis for the inspection, Marcus decided to cooperate fully. He explained that he had nothing to hide and would be happy to show them around his property. He did mention that certain areas contained materials subject to federal regulation, and that any unauthorized access could result in serious legal consequences. Linda dismissed his warnings, his attempts at intimidation, and demanded immediate access to all areas of the property, including the basement storage areas. She claimed that the HOA had received multiple complaints about potential safety violations and that their inspection was both necessary and legally justified. Marcus led the group through his main living areas, which were neat, clean, and completely unremarkable. His kitchen, dining room, and living room showed no signs of commercial activity or anything that could be considered an HOA violation. Linda seemed disappointed by the obvious normalcy of the space and began looking for more subtle problems. She measured window treatments to ensure they met architectural guidelines and checked paint colors against the approved HOA palette. She examined his furniture placement to see if anything violated sight line requirements, and even criticized the arrangement of books on his shelves, claiming they created an unapproved commercial appearance. The HOA attorney grew increasingly uncomfortable as Linda nitpicking became more obvious. He had agreed to accompany the inspection team to provide legal and vet guidance, but had not expected to witness what appeared to be harassment of a homeowner who was clearly in compliance with all reasonable regulations. Tom Rodriguez and Patricia Wells were also becoming uncomfortable with Linda's behavior. They had supported the inspection based on her claims about safety concerns, but were now seeing that her real motivation seemed to be finding any possible violation, regardless of how minor or questionable. When Linda demanded access to the basement, Marcus agreed readily, explaining that he would need to disarm his security system first. He made a show of entering codes on several keypads, explaining that federal regulations required multiple security layers for ammunition storage. Linda's ears perked up at the mention of ammunition, and she began asking detailed questions about quantities, types, and storage methods. Marcus answered her questions honestly, explaining that he was a recreational shooter who reloaded his own ammunition as a hobby. He showed her his federal permits and explained the inspection and compliance requirements that he met regularly. He even offered to call his ATF contact to verify his compliance status if she had any concerns, but Linda was not interested in verification. She was focused on gaining access to what she now knew was a significant ammunition storage facility. Her questions became more specific, and her behavior more aggressive as she pushed past Marcus toward the secured storage area. The basement workshop was impressive by any standard. Marcus had created a clean, well-organized space with professional grade equipment for ammunition reloading, metalworking, and general maintenance projects. Everything was clearly labeled, properly stored, and meticulously maintained. The space looked more like a high-end commercial facility than a residential workshop. Linda immediately began taking photographs and making notes about what she claimed were commercial violations. She argued that the professional appearance of the workshop constituted evidence of business activity and that the quantity of equipment exceeded what would be reasonable for personal use. The HOA attorney pointed out that many homeowners had well-equipped workshops and that there was no specific regulation limiting the quality or quantity of personal tools and equipment, but Linda insisted that the scale and organization of Marcus' setup indicated commercial activity that violated HOA regulations. As they moved deeper into the basement, Marcus could see Linda growing more excited as she approached the secured ammunition storage area. The main storage locker was clearly marked with federal warning signs and equipped with multiple security systems that were obviously more sophisticated than typical residential security. Linda demanded immediate access to the storage locker, claiming that the HOA inspection authority extended to all areas of the property. Marcus explained that opening the secure storage would require specific procedures and that unauthorized access could trigger federal alarms. It would bring immediate law enforcement response. Linda dismissed his warnings as more intimidation and demanded that he open the storage immediately. She claimed that his refusal to provide access was itself evidence of illegal activity, and that she was prepared to call local law enforcement to force compliance. What Linda did not know was that federal agents were already in position and had been monitoring the entire inspection through concealed surveillance equipment. Agent Morris and her team had heard every word of Linda's increasingly aggressive demands and were prepared to intervene the moment she attempted unauthorized access to federal ammunition storage. Marcus made one final attempt to de-escalate the situation. He offered to call Agent Maurice directly and arrange for a federal inspector to verify his compliance status in Linda's presence. Explained that this would provide definitive proof that his storage met all legal requirements and would resolve any legitimate safety concerns. But Linda was beyond reason. She had become convinced that Marcus was hiding something and that his offers of federal verification were simply attempts to delay her investigation. She moved toward the storage locker and began examining the locking mechanisms, clearly intending to find a way to force access. The moment Linda touched the secured storage system, alarms began sounding throughout the basement. Federal alert systems activated, automatically notifying ATF headquarters that unauthorized access was being attempted at a monitored ammunition storage facility. Within seconds, Agent Morris received electronic notification that the storage facility was under potential attack. Linda jumped back from the storage locker, startled by the sudden alarm activity. Marcus calmly explained that she had just triggered federal security systems and that law enforcement response was now automatic and unavoidable. He suggested that everyone move upstairs immediately to avoid any potential complications. But Linda was now committed to her course of action. She accused Marcus of setting up elaborate security systems to hide illegal activities and demanded that he shut off the alarms and open the storage immediately. She threatened to have him arrested for obstruction and claimed that the HOA had authority to override federal regulations in matters of neighborhood safety. The HOA attorney finally intervened, pointing out they had clearly exceeded their authority and needed to leave the property immediately. He explained that tampering with federal security systems was a serious crime and that everyone present could face criminal charges. If they did not withdraw immediately, but before anyone could leave the basement, federal agents entered the house. Agent Morris and 3 other ATF officers appeared at the top of the basement stairs with weapons drawn and federal identification clearly displayed. They ordered everyone to remain calm and keep their hands visible. While they secured the scene, Linda's reaction was immediate and dramatic. She began screaming that she was being set up and that Marcus had somehow arranged for fake federal agents to intimidate her. She demanded to see identification and claimed that the entire situation was an elaborate fraud designed to prevent legitimate HOA enforcement. Agent Morris calmly displayed her federal credentials and explained that Linda had just attempted to force access to a federally monitored ammunition storage facility. She read Linda her rights and informed her that she was under arrest for attempted theft of federal ammunition and conspiracy to violate federal firearms regulations. The other members of the inspection team were questioned separately and released. After it became clear that they had been manipulated by Linda and had no knowledge of her criminal intentions, the HOA attorney immediately distanced himself from Linda's actions and provided a statement, describing her increasingly erratic behavior during the inspection. As federal agents searched Linda's person vehicle, they found additional evidence of her criminal planning. She had brought bolt cutters, lockpicks, and other tools clearly intended for breaking into secured storage areas. She also had handwritten notes detailing ammunition prices and potential buyers that she had researched in preparation for her theft. The federal investigation revealed that Linda had been planning her theft for weeks. Her HOA enforcement activities had been a cover for criminal reconnaissance as she gathered information about Marcus's storage systems and developed a plan to steal valuable ammunition for illegal resale. Linda's ex-husband had indeed been involved in illegal arms trafficking, and Linda had maintained contact with his criminal associates after their divorce. She had been under federal surveillance for months as agents investigated her potential involvement in ongoing trafficking operations. The ATF investigation also revealed that Linda had targeted other neighborhood residents who she suspected of having valuable firearms or ammunition collections. Marcus had simply been her first major target, because his legitimate federal storage facility represented the largest potential score. When confronted with the evidence, Linda finally admitted to her criminal intentions. She had never cared about HOA violations or neighborhood safety, but had seen an opportunity to steal valuable ammunition that she could sell to her ex-husband criminal contacts for substantial profit. The federal charges against Linda were serious and carried potential sentences of up to 20 years in prison. Her attorneys advised her to accept a plea bargain that would result in a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation with the ongoing investigation into illegal arms trafficking networks. Marcus was commended by federal agents for his cooperation with the investigation and his professional handling of a dangerous situation. His security systems had worked exactly as designed, providing federal authorities with clear evidence of criminal activity while protecting both his property and his community. The HOA board voted unanimously to remove Linda from her position as president and to censure her for exceeding her authority and endangering neighborhood residents, Margaret Foster was elected as interim president and immediately implemented new policies to prevent similar abuses of HOA power. Tom Rodriguez and Patricia Wells publicly apologized to Marcus for their role in Linda harassment campaign. They explained that they had been misled about the nature of the inspection and had not understood that Linda was using the HOA as cover for criminal activity. The neighborhood response was overwhelmingly supportive of Marcus. Residents who had been intimidated by Linda's aggressive enforcement tactics came forward to share their own stories of harassment and abuse. Many expressed gratitude that her criminal activities had been exposed before she could cause additional harm. Marcus received dozens of thank you cards and invitations to neighborhood gatherings as residents sought to make amends for the treatment he had received. Several neighbors also asked for advice about home security and legal firearm storage. Inspired by his professional approach to personal protection, local media covered the story extensively, focusing on the unusual case of an HOA president who had used her position to plan federal crimes. The coverage highlighted the importance of proper oversight of homeowner association activities and the potential for abuse when residents are given unchecked authority over their neighbors. Legal experts used the case as an example of how HOA powers could be misused and recommended stronger legal protections for homeowners facing harassment from association officials. Several state legislators proposed new laws that would limit HOA inspection authority and provide penalties for officials who exceeded their legitimate powers. Federal prosecutors used Linda's case as part of a broader crackdown on illegal arms trafficking in the region. Her cooperation with the investigation led to the arrest of several other individuals involved in illegal weapons sales and helped dismantle a significant criminal network. The case also prompted the ATF to review their monitoring procedures for private ammunition storage facilities. They implemented new protocols that would provide faster response to unauthorized access attempts and better protection for law-abiding citizens who chose to maintain significant personal ammunition supplies. Marcus continued to live peacefully in Willowbrook with a newfound appreciation for the value of good neighbors and proper legal procedures. His experience had been stressful, but had ultimately strengthened his faith in the federal law enforcement system and the importance of standing up to bullies and criminals. He also became more active in neighborhood affairs, serving on the reformed HOA Board and helping to establish policies that would protect residents from future harassment. His military experience and federal connections made him a valuable resource. For neighbors seeking advice about home security and legal compliance, the secure ammunition storage facility in Marcus's basement continued to operate under federal oversight with regular inspections and updates to security systems. Agent Morris remained in contact with Marcus both professionally and personally as they had developed a mutual respect during the investigation. Linda Patterson was eventually sentenced to 5 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to attempted theft of federal ammunition and conspiracy charges. Her criminal record prevented her from ever serving in any position of authority within a homeowner association or similar organization. The case became a cautionary tale about the potential for abuse within homeowner associations and the importance of proper oversight of neighborhood officials. It also demonstrated how federal law enforcement agencies could effectively protect law-abiding citizens from criminals who attempted to use legitimate organizations as cover for illegal activities. Marcus Thompson had begun his retirement expecting a quiet life in suburbia, but had instead found himself at the center of a federal investigation that exposed serious criminal activity in his own neighborhood. His military training and careful preparation had protected both himself and his community, while helping federal agents bring a dangerous criminal to justice. The experience reinforced his belief in the importance of following proper procedures, maintaining detailed documentation, and working cooperatively with law enforcement when faced with suspicious or threatening behavior. His methodical approach to the situation had turned what could have been a personal disaster into a victory for justice and community safety. As Marcus settled back into his peaceful retirement routine, he reflected on the lessons learned from his encounter with Linda Patterson. He had been reminded that criminals could appear in unexpected forms and use seemingly legitimate authority to pursue illegal goals. But he had also learned that proper preparation and cooperation with appropriate Authorities could effectively counter even sophisticated criminal schemes. The neighborhood of Willowbrook was ultimately stronger, safer, because of the events that had unfolded. Residents were more aware of their rights and responsibilities regarding HOA activities and more willing to question authority when it appeared to be misused. The Reformed Association operated with greater transparency and accountability, ensuring that future residents would be protected from similar abuse. Marcus's ammunition storage facility continued to serve as a model for legal private ammunition storage, with federal agents occasionally bringing other citizens to see his setup as an example of how regulations could be exceeded while maintaining full legal compliance. His professional approach to firearms ownership had not only protected him from criminal attack, but it also helped educate others about responsible gun ownership and storage. The story of Linda Patterson attempted theft and subsequent federal prosecution became part of ATF training materials as an example of how criminals might attempt to exploit legitimate organizations for illegal purposes. Federal agents learned to watch for similar patterns of behavior and to take seriously reports of suspicious HOA or similar activities that might mask criminal intent. Marcus had successfully defended his property, his rights, and his community. Through careful preparation, professional expertise, and cooperation with federal law enforcement, his victory was complete not only in personal terms but also in its contribution to broader community safety and the effective enforcement of federal firearms regulations. The case served as a powerful reminder that the rule of law applies equally to everyone, regardless of their position or authority within community organizations. Linda Patterson had learned too late that federal ammunition storage facilities are protected by serious criminal penalties, and that, attempting to abuse HOA authority for criminal purposes, would result in swift and severe consequences. For Marcus Thompson, the experience had been a test of his military training, civilian legal knowledge, and personal character. He had passed that test with distinction, protecting both his own interests and those of his community, while helping federal agents dismantle a criminal network that had threatened the safety and security of law-abiding gun owners throughout the region. His story became an inspiration to other gun owners who faced harassment from neighbors or local officials who did not understand federal firearms regulations. Marcus's example showed that proper documentation, legal compliance, and cooperation with appropriate authorities could effectively protect constitutional rights while maintaining community harmony and safety. The ammunition locker that had been the focus of Linda criminal attention continued to operate exactly as Marcus had designed it, exceeding all federal requirements while serving his legitimate recreational shooting needs. The security systems that had detected and prevented Linda theft attempt remained in place as both practical protection and a symbol of the importance of proper preparation in defending against criminal attack. Agent Rebecca Morris continued her work with the ATF, using the lessons learned from the ATF series Patterson case to improve federal protection for law-abiding gun owners and ammunition storage facilities. Her professional relationship with Marcus had evolved into a personal friendship based on mutual respect for each other, dedication to public safety, and legal compliance. The Willowbrook neighborhood had been forever changed by the events surrounding Linda Patterson criminal activities. Residents were more vigilant about potential abuse of authority, were supportive of their law-abiding neighbors, and more appreciative of the federal law enforcement agencies that protected their community from criminal threats. Marcus Thompson had achieved something remarkable in his retirement. He had not only successfully defended his own property and rights, but had also helped expose and eliminate a criminal threat to his entire community. His military service had prepared him for combat overseas, but his civilian experience had proven that the same principles of preparation, vigilance, and lawful response could be equally effective in protecting a home and neighborhood from domestic threats. The story of how an overzealous HOA president attempt to steal federal ammunition had backfired spectacularly served as both entertainment and education for communities across the country. It demonstrated the importance of understanding legal authority, respecting federal regulations, and the consequences that await those who attempt to abuse positions of trust for criminal purposes. Marcus' secure ammunition storage facility had become more than just a place to store recreational shooting supplies. It had become a symbol of how law-abiding citizens could effectively protect their rights and property through proper legal compliance. Professional preparation and cooperation with federal authorities when faced with criminal threats disguised as legitimate